welcome to this new edition of the Top MBA Bookshelf. Today we will discuss Embracing Complexity, a book that at DTU we gave to our new MBA participants as a summer read. How do we think of our world today? Do we still think with Newton that our world works like a clock, with stable, well-defined, predictable relationship between forces and bodies in motion? Or is there something more complex to our world that this mechanistic view does not capture? You may have noticed that there is a lot of talk about ecosystems in the natural world, but also in the business world, where companies and employees interconnect like organisms and thrive or just survive, compete and cooperate. So let's see what we can learn from forests as natural ecosystems. Research has shown that healthy forests go through a cycle of growth, collapse, and regeneration. From the initial chaos comes growth, where species move into the ecosystem, self-organize, and interconnect through the flow of energy and materials. Feedback loops kick in. Think of rabbits and foxes whose population balance one another. A forest gets very efficient at using all the energy available, eliminating redundancies. At some point, the diversity of organisms flatlines or even declines, and the ecosystems becomes rigid. Then, a shock like a fire or an insect outbreak can trigger the collapse of the forest ecosystem. The forest components lose their connections and their self-regulations, yet this collapse also allows the forest to renew itself, the ecosystem to reorganize and regenerate itself from the fewer surviving species. So it's a cycle of ecosystem death and rebirth. So the first takeaway is that there is a trade-off in an ecosystem between, on the one hand, the efficiency and the optimization, and on the other hand, the diversity and the resilience. So what other concepts can we draw from this example to understand our business environment? A worldview embracing complexity describes an ecosystem with first regimes, that is, a phase of the ecosystem with distinct, stable patterns of organization. You can think of chaos versus growth in the case of the forest, or industry life cycles, or the phases in the life of a company from startup to scale up to more mature. Second, feedback loops that provide stability in the case of the rabbits versus the foxes, or conversely accelerate an evolution out of the stable state, like excessive deregulation or speculative bubbles on financial markets. Third, events, either in the external environment, like the launch of new products, or internal to an organization, like a change in leadership. Events and specific sequences of events can disrupt regimes, and that's why economists study the events and policies as feedback loops that led to the stock market crash of 1929. And fourth are the tipping points, like the stock market crash of 1929, which led to the Great Depression. Tipping points are irreversible changes of regime in an ecosystem. In the case of the forest, from growth to collapse. Tipping points lead to unpredictable reconfiguration and the emergence of novel features. Another example of tipping point was the introduction of mobile phones, which led to the emergence of SMS as means of communication that nobody predicted. There is much more to the theory of complexity, but the bottom line for me is that the complexity mindset helps deal with the accelerating pace of disruptions because it gives us a language to make sense of events in context with the interconnected organization that have nonlinear relationships. For example, to evaluate changes in your environment and whether you should respond or adapt to them. A language to factor in rather than discard or discount volatile or ambiguous information, risks and opportunities, and build a systemic, dynamic view of your business. That's important when you develop strategy. Thank you for watching the Top MBA Bookshelf. Next time we will discuss Growth versus Fixed Mindset by Carol Dweck.